You are tuned into winds of thought. Settle in and listen closely. On the afternoon, I became the youngest executive partner in my city. My parents asked me for a loan, but years prior, on the morning of my university convocation, my father tossed my sister the keys to a Bavarian convertible while handing me a crumpled transit schedule. I stood there in my academic regalia, clutching my mortarboard with white-knuckle grip, watching him dangle that electronic key like a pendulum from a life I was forbidden to enter. One child received premium leather upholstery, a giant red ribbon, and a celebratory portrait session in the front yard. The other child, me, received a dismissive shrug and the words, "You'll manage. You're accustomed to navigating things yourself." I trekked to the municipal bus stop, the hem of my graduation gown dragging against the dirty concrete, replaying that statement on a loop, struggling to keep it from shattering a composure that had been fractured for years. By the time I disembarked, near the stadium, the plaza was teeming with families snapping selfies, fathers clutching bouquets of roses, and people cheering for children whose middle names they actually remembered. I assumed my position in the procession, fixed my gaze on the horizon, and whispered that this achievement still belonged to me. Then, the dean announced my name over the loudspeakers, appending a distinction my family never anticipated hearing. Associated with my file, summa cum laude, department honors, thunderous applause. When I turned to the audience, I finally located my relatives. The expression on my father's visage confirmed that this was no longer just a tedious ceremony to him. It was the first moment he comprehended that the daughter he exiled to public transit had constructed an empire he could not command and had never financed. Before I reveal what he uttered afterward and the scorching reply I finally delivered, pause for a moment. Let me know what time it is and where you are viewing from, because I want to track exactly how far this story of one bus ride can travel. My name is Elena Vance. Long before that silver convertible materialized in our driveway, the narrative of my place in this family had been unfolding for decades and thousands of microscopic cuts that nobody tallied but me. I was raised in a standard middle-class residence in the suburbs where everything appeared pristine from the curb. We had the manicured turf, the seasonal wreaths, and the color-coordinated apparel for holiday greetings. Yet there was a silent statue embossed onto every single day of my upbringing. One offspring was porcelain, requiring perpetual handling. The other offspring, me, was rubber, expected to bounce back. When I was 7, I discovered that if I tripped and lacerated my knee, I had to fetch my own adhesive strip from the medicine cabinet because there was already a louder siren wailing. In the den, when I brought home a perfect score on a math exam, it lived on the refrigerator for exactly one evening. When my younger sister, Chloe, brought home a participation ribbon, it earned a dedicated floating shelf in a celebratory banquet. Nobody ever sat me down to explicitly state, "You matter less." They didn't need to. It was engineered into what they applauded and what they overlooked. Every birthday made the template more difficult to deny. Chloe received brand new bicycles, painting easements, and private weekend workshops. I received utility. Sturdy footwear for school, a nondescript coat from the clearance rack, such a bargain, or a voucher accompanied by a tight grimace. If I appeared disheartened, the rebuttal was always identical. "You are self-sufficient. You require less." They phrased it as praise. It landed like a threat. Do not demand more as we aged. The segregation became undeniable. Chloe was the vibrant one, the sentimental one, the dynasty's future, introduced at parties with a theatrical flourish. I was the reliable one, the pragmatic one, adept at existing in solitude. Those descriptors sound pleasant until you recognize. Their alibis used to explain why nobody is coming to check on your welfare by junior high, The afternoons were bifurcated. My father chauffeured Chloe to her extracurriculars equestrian club, ballet, cheerleading, boasting to neighbors about how elated he was to watch her shine. I boarded the municipal coach home, unlocked a silent house, completed my algebra at the breakfast bar, and scavenged whatever sustenance I could locate. It wasn't theatrical abandonment. It was a stack of small, quiet verdicts, day after day, day after day. That informed me precisely of my rank. I discovered my first external validator in a classmate named Sarah. We bonded in the school library, both seeking refuge from our respective chaotic households. She observed details like how my parents never attended open house unless Chloe had a solo, or how I obsessively checked my purse before agreeing to buy a soda. One afternoon, after my family once again departed a ceremony early before my category was announced, she whispered, "You realize this is toxic, correct?" I shrugged because by then, toxicity was my only atmosphere. Secondary school resolved nothing. It merely attached higher price tags to the disparity. Chloe's bedroom evolved into a revolving boutique of fashion and cosmetics. Shopping bags appeared on her duvet every fortnight, parcels arriving on the porch emblazoned with her initials. When I requested assistance with university application fees, the response was a prolonged, meticulous lecture on fiscal responsibility and tempering expectations. My father adored discussing Chloe's potential, her vision, her destiny. When the topic pivoted to me, he shifted into logistics. "You're resilient," he would say. "You don't require that sort of supervision." I learned to agree, suppress my rage, and return to computing how many minimum wage hours were required to fund what nobody else intended to sponsor. There was no singular, deafening argument. No cinematic betrayal I could point to, just a design. One child was the asset. The other was the insurance policy, expected to hum quietly in the periphery, asterisk by the time acceptance letters arrived. The screenplay was already finalized, closing. Acceptance was met with helium balloons, a steakhouse reservation, and a high-end laptop because she needs professional tools. My acceptance was met with a brochure on federal lending and a chat about how working part-time builds moral fiber. Didn't comprehend it then, but they weren't just curating my calendar. They were conditioning me to accept sawdust and call it a banquet. What they failed to anticipate is what occurs when the neglected child takes that conditioning and utilizes it to construct a fortress without them. My university experience didn't. Commence with dormitory move-in snapshots and teary embraces in the loading zone. It commenced with a printed transit map, a thrifted duffel bag, and a grant notification that covered tuition but left every other expense dangling over my skull like a debt nobody wanted to claim. I landed on campus with barely enough currency. For 2 weeks of rations, the most inexpensive linens available, and the obstinate resolve that I would not withdraw simply because my family decided my ambitions were a hobby rather than a priority. The curriculum hit with velocity. Professors didn't know or care whom my parents preferred. All they perceived was my surname on the roster, my syntax on the essays, my timestamp on the submission server. In a bizarre twist, that was the first kindness. Nobody compared me to Chloe here. However, the inverse was savage. If I stumbled, there was no safety net. I couldn't afford to fail a module and repeat it. I couldn't take a lighter load because I was fatigued. Every credit hour had a $sign attached. Within the first week, I secured a job, then a second. The university post office hired me for mornings, sorting parcels in a windowless bunker that always felt frigid. The wages were meager but consistent. I memorized names on crates, watched other freshmen collect care packages and new wardrobes and gourmet snack boxes from home, and reminded myself that jealousy was a tax I couldn't afford to pay at night. When most residences were settling into social gatherings or streaming movies, I donned latex gloves and sanitized corridors and faculty restrooms in the adjacent sciences building. It wasn't glamorous. It was fluorescent buzz, chemical solvents, and the quiet echo of my own internal monologue chanting, "One more deposit, one more month secured." When that still failed to bridge the gap for rent, textbooks, and nutrition, I registered for the campus courier service. I acquired a rusted bicycle from a pawn shop, memorized the shortcuts through the city, and began trading my evenings for delivery tickets on a mobile app. That is how I encountered the man who would inadvertently alter the orbit of my existence. The first evening I delivered to his suite, I was 30 minutes past the threshold of exhaustion, that state where your limbs move strictly by muscle memory. I ascended the stairs to a compact, unpretentious office in a building I'd never noted before. The corridor was vacant, save for one door bleeding light from the jam. I rapped on the wood, shifted the grease-stained bag to my left hand, and attempted to stabilize my voice. Delivery. The door swung open to reveal a man in his 30s with weary eyes and a dress shirt that looked like it had started crisp but surrendered to the long day. Behind him, the walls were plastered with whiteboards, scrawled schematics, vectors, and half-finished branding flows that looked like hieroglyphics to me. He appeared startled to see me, as if he'd forgotten the act of ordering sustenance. Asterisk. "You're operating this late?" he queried, scribbling on the receipt. I nearly chuckled. "This is the early rotation," I blurted before I could censor myself. "I still have a thesis to draft later." He paused, the pen halting mid-stroke. "You're a student?" I nodded. "How many employments?" he asked. It wasn't intrusive, it was analytical. The way someone asks about load-bearing walls because they understand. "Structural integrity, 3, theoretically," I stated. "Mailroom, janitorial, and this. And full-time academics," he appended. "I lack alternatives," I replied, shifting my weight, desperate for him to sign so I could depart. "It's manageable. I adapt." Something in his countenance shifted. Not sympathy, not awe, but identification. Like he spotted the invisible yoke. I'd been hauling and was mentally calculating its mass. He returned the receipt along with a gratuity that made my eyes widen. "What is your discipline?" he asked. "Communications," I said. Currently, he echoed softly, almost filing. "The data away. Be safe traveling home." I gave a curt nod and vanished, categorizing it as another eccentric interaction on a grueling shift. But that brief exchange lingered long after my legs stopped throbbing that night. It was the premier instance in years that someone asked what. I was constructing, not just how I planned to endure. I didn't know it yet, but I had just met Silas Thorne. A name that would eventually reside on the contract that redefined my trajectory. At that juncture. However, I still believe my biography would be nothing more than a loop of early alarms, discount noodles, and fatigued treks under street lamps. No one from my lineage called to inquire about my welfare. No parcels, no surprise inspections. I watched snapshots of their lives materialize on my feed bistro dinners, weekend getaways, Chloe modeling new garments, exuding the casual relaxation of someone who knows there is always a parachute. I kept scrolling. I kept laboring. I recited the mantra, "They selected her. That's acceptable. I will select myself." I didn't realize how prophetic that vow would become the second time I encountered Silas. He wasn't the enigma behind an office door. He was seated at a high top in the student union, an espresso half consumed, a spread of design proofs laid out like a puzzle. I had just concluded a lecture and was mentally cataloging deadlines when I spotted him. He spotted me first. "Courier girl with the triple shift," he said, tapping his ceramic mug. I was hoping our paths would intersect again. I hesitated. I possessed zero capacity for banter, and my rucksack was cutting into my trapezius, reminding me of the essays. Pending, but there was something in his tone inquisitive, devoid of pressure, that arrested me. "I'm off duty," I said. "No sustenance today." He offered a half smile. "Excellent. Sit for a moment. I promise I am not attempting to sell you a subscription." Against my survival instincts, I sat. He requested my name, and this time it felt like a legitimate inquiry, not administrative data collection. Then he probed into areas nobody else bothered with. What I aimed to do post-commencement, which lectures actually stimulated me, which component of my current existence felt the most brittle. I kept my responses superficial initially, but he possessed a method of listening that made evasion feel inefficient. So I offered the truth. I admitted I lacked a master plan, only a catalog of conditions I refused to return to. I told him I was fascinated by narrative architecture, by helping entities articulate a message, but I didn't know where that slotted into the economy. I told him I was fatigued in a way that sleep no longer remedied. He didn't flinch. He just nodded, as if mentally sliding those components into a schematic. "I direct a strategy and brand consultancy," he said. "Thorne and Sterling. We partner with emerging enterprises, nonprofits, people attempting to articulate their identity in a way the market will actually register." I raised a skeptical brow. "And you're conversing with an insolvent undergraduate who barely has time to digest food. Curious demographic targeting." He chuckled. "I am conversing with someone who juggles 3 occupations, maintains attendance, and can answer direct interrogations without varnishing the reality. That is a commodity more scarce in my industry than you suspect." Then he delivered the sentence that nudged my train onto a fresh rail. "You should submit for our apprenticeship program." I almost declined by reflex. Apprenticeships, in my worldview, were uncompensated playgrounds for the wealthy. "I cannot labor for exposure," I told him bluntly. "I do not possess parents who will subsidize my lease while I learn to curate color palettes." "It is salaried," he interjected immediately. "Not opulent, but equitable. And we don't do coffee. Runs. If you are present, you are producing." The conviction in his voice made it difficult to deflect. Yet I felt that ancient resistance swell. The defense mechanism built over years of being told I was the solitary one, the one who didn't require assistance. "Why me?" I asked. He didn't offer a grandiose monologue. He just shrugged. "Because you already comprehend how to bear a load. Because you are visibly unafraid of friction. Technique is teachable, hunger is not." That statement adhered to my psyche long after he slid his card across the laminate. I took it, buried it in a binder, and spent the week convincing myself to abstain. Every time I loaded the application page, I heard my father's voice in the background, not saying, "I believe in you," but saying, "Don't reach too high. You are on your own." Finally, on a Tuesday, after a particular grueling sanitation shift, I sat at my workspace, opened a blank document, and typed the truth. I wrote about the multiple jobs, about learning to communicate rapidly with exhausted people, about noticing details nobody taught me to see. I didn't embellish. I didn't feign a glamorous life. I just detailed what self-reliance had forged me into. 2 weeks later, I checked my inbox between lectures and saw the subject line that made my pulse stutter. "Thorne and Sterling, offer of employment." I read it once, then again, just to verify I wasn't hallucinating from sleep deprivation. Paid, part-time, adaptable to my academic calendar. A chance to acquire tangible equity in a skill set. I accepted. Before my anxiety could intervene, the inaugural day at Thorne and Sterling, I stepped into an environment that resembled nothing of my family's world and everything like a future I'd forbidden myself to visualize. Glass partitions, collaborative, breakout zones, a gallery of past campaigns that conveyed entire novels with 3 words. Silas introduced me to his co-founder, Elena Sharp, a woman whose discernment missed nothing and whose handshake communicated. I have no patience for incompetence without uttering a syllable. Elena didn't treat me like a fragile novice. She handed me a client dossier and demanded 3 strategic bullet points by dusk. No training wheels. It was terrifying. It was the first time being independent actually yielded a dividend. I began assimilating rapid-fire lessons on reading subtext, structuring arguments, and metabolizing criticism without crumbling. At night, I reduced my delivery shifts. I ceased cleaning restrooms. My time had appreciated in value, and for the first time, someone other than me had determined that was factual. While this new dimension expanded, the old one remained stubbornly static. My family didn't call to ask for updates. If they considered my existence, it was in vague abstractions. She is away at school. She is fine. She always is. But miles away, in an office with my name on a keycard, I was quietly evolving into a stranger to them. Thorn and Sterling became the incubator where I grew into a version of myself my family had never encountered. During the day, I was a strategist. At night, I was a scholar. But now, the pressure was generative, not crushing. Elena began pulling me into high-level meetings, asking, "Elena, what is your read?" The first time she did it in front of a paying client, I thought she'd erred, but she watched me with that steady gaze that said, "I wouldn't ask if I didn't think you could deliver, Dot, so I delivered." I spoke about empathy, about the gap between corporate polish and human reality. The client nodded. Silas caught my eye and mouthed, "Solid." I walked home that evening with something buoyant in my chest, the sensation of being seen. Meanwhile, my phone remained dormant. My family's updates were filtered through the digital glass of social media. Chloe posing, my parents dining, events I wasn't invited to. It didn't lacerate me like it used to. There was too much momentum in my own, lane to mourn the traffic in theirs. That detachment was stress-tested the day an email arrived from my Aunt Meredith. She had always been the silent observer at Thanksgiving, the one who noticed when I slipped away to wash dishes while the others fawned over. Chloe, she was passing through the city and requested coffee. We met at a cafe. She looked older, but her gaze was kind and direct. She let me speak about the internship, the classes, the grind. She didn't interrupt. After a while, she shifted gears. "Do you hear from your parents?" she asked gently. I shrugged. "Sporadically. Usually when they need a favor." She offered a sad smile. "That aligns with what I've witnessed." Then she revealed something that didn't shock me so much as validate a hypothesis I tried to ignore. She had visited my parents recently. My father had spent 20 minutes bragging about Chloe's plans, potential boutique, an influencer brand, vague ambitions dripping in his money. When the topic shifted to me, his tone flattened. "Elena? Oh, she's off doing her little thing, keeps busy. She's always been solitary. We don't worry about her." My aunt watched my reaction. "I thought you deserved to know how you are discussed." In your absence, I stirred my cold coffee. Oddly, it didn't sting. It just landed in the archive of facts. They discussed me as background radiation, not a protagonist. Asterisk. "Thanks," I said. "Clarity is better than pretense." "You are building something substantial," she said, "with or without them." A week later, my phone illuminated with my father's name. It had been months. I almost let it go to voicemail. Curiosity won. "Hello." I answered. "So I hear you've landed some fancy apprenticeship," he opened, background noise of TV and Chloe's laughter filtering through. "It's going well," I said cautiously. "Good. Listen, your sister is launching this boutique concept. Online presence, branding, whatever. Since you're already messing around with those computer things, I thought you could set her up. Messing around. Computer things. The way he compressed my career into a toy was breathtaking. What are you asking? I said neutrally. Build the package, he said, as if ordering a sandwich. Logos, site, social strategy. It helps the family. And frankly, after everything we've done for you, it's a small ask. Everything we've done. The phrase tightened my jaw. I thought of the double shifts, the hunger, the loans. I don't have capacity for pro bono work, I said evenly. I am juggling a full course load and a job. It's your sister, he snapped. Family helps family. Family shows up before they need a service, I replied. I am not a free extension of your vanity project. Silence on the line. Then you've changed. You've become arrogant. I've grown up, I said. That was the point, wasn't it? He muttered something about ingratitude and hung up. I stared at the phone, then placed it face down and returned to my client pitch. For the first time, choosing myself didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like step 1. By the time graduation approached, my life was split into 2 distinct tracks. On one side, the grind at Thorne and Sterling. On the other, a theoretical family. The boutique requests faded. I poured my energy into the people. Who actually responded? When graduation season arrived, my advisor pulled me aside. Check your email. The dean's office is trying to reach you. I opened the message. Dean's Excellence Award recipient. Highest honors. It felt surreal. I called the only people whose opinion mattered. Silas and Elena. They finally noticed. Elena said dryly. Take the afternoon off. This is yours. Yours, not ours. Mind out I didn't tell my parents about the award. I just sent the date and time. I wanted that moment on stage to be unpolluted by their narrative. Which brings us back to the Mercedes, the bus, and my father's face when my name echoed through the arena after the ceremony, amidst the chaos of photos and bouquets I received. A text. Meet us by the fountain. I walked out, diploma in hand. They were waiting. Dad with arms crossed, Mom with a stiff smile, Chloe tapping on her phone in a designer dress. And the Mercedes parked illegally near the entrance. There she is, my father said. Our graduate, it twisted in my gut. He hugged me for the camera. You didn't mention the award, my mother said, eyeing the gold seal on my folder. We had to hear it from the loudspeaker. I wasn't sure you'd be interested, I replied. Of course we are, Chloe scoffed. It makes the family look successful. There it was. Reflected glory. My father cleared his throat. Listen, we've been thinking it's best if you move back home for a while. Save rent. Help out. Chloe's boutique is taking shape, and with your marketing thing, you could launch it. It's a perfect fit. My marketing thing? My degree, my career, reduced to a stepping stone for the golden child. I already have a contract, I said. Full-time at the firm, I'm staying here. My father's jaw clenched. You can't choose some office job over family. This is your chance to repay the investment. What investment? I asked quietly. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. You chose where to put your effort, I interrupted. You chose which child got the resources and which one got the lecture. I figured it out without you. Watch your tone, he hissed. We are your parents, and I am your daughter. But that doesn't mean I owe you my future. I am not moving back. I am not building a business for Chloe while you call my profession a little thing. You are being selfish, he spat. Family has room in the car, I said, pointing to the Mercedes. Family asks how you survived for 4 years before they ask what you can do for them. If you want a branding team, hire one. Pay them. I am not your unpaid intern. My father stared at me like I was an alien. I don't know who put these ideas in your head. No one had to, I said. All I did was keep score. I saw the realization land. The quiet daughter had learned to speak. Fine, he said. Do what you want. Don't come crying when it fails. It's already standing, I replied. That's the point. I walked away from that fountain, diploma in one hand, freedom in the other. Post graduation. Life wasn't easy, but it was mine. I moved into a studio, signed my contract, and traded my student ID for a badge that said Associate Strategist. The work was hard, but the distance from my family was healing. Months passed. I heard little. Then, about 8 months later, collision happened. I was finalizing a proposal when the receptionist called. Elena, 3 people are here. They claimed to be family. My hand froze. I hadn't given them my address. Send them up. When the elevator doors opened, it was like watching ghosts enter a spaceship. My father gawked at the glass walls, the wards, the sleek decor. My mother looked nervous. Chloe looked envious. So this is where you've been hiding, my father said. Working, I corrected. Not hiding. I led them to a conference room. Why are you here? He pulled out a folder. Messy logos, amateur layouts. The boutique is ready. We need a real launch. You have the resources here. This firm can handle it. You supervise. It's a win-win. Asterisk, the entitlement was dizzying. He wasn't asking. He was assigning. You want my firm to take you as a client? I asked. You want my reputation tied to a project you planned without me? We're giving you a chance to prove yourself, he said. I thought of the bus ride. The empty seat in the Mercedes. No, I said. No? He repeated. I am refusing to let you turn my career into a favor. If you want to pitch us, go through the channels. Sign a contract. Pay the fees, but I will not handle the account. You are letting pride ruin this, my mother pleaded. I am letting reality govern this, I said. You didn't come to heal. You came because I have access to something you want. You poured resources into one child and told the other to figure it out. I did. Now you want the dividends of that neglect. That isn't family. That is opportunism. The room went silent. If you walk away, my father threatened, don't expect us to be there. I stopped expecting that years ago, I said. I gathered their papers and handed them back. Take this. You'll need it for a real consultant. I opened the door. The conversation was deceased. They walked out, stiff and shocked, stripped of the control they thought they owned. When the elevator closed, I didn't shake. I exhaled. That was the day I understood. Sometimes the people who raised you are the last to see who you've become. They look for the version that needs them, or the version that makes them feel superior. I returned to my desk and finished the work for a client who respected me. So if you are listening and you recognize this dynamic, the favoritism, the quiet neglect, hear this. Walking away is not betrayal. It is self-preservation. My father bought my sister a car and told me to take the bus. For years, I thought that defined my worth. Now I see it was just a billboard for his character. You cannot rewrite the years you accepted scraps. That you can choose to build a life where your value isn't measured by how much you can be used. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop begging for a seat in a vehicle that was never going to carry you, and start walking toward the empire you built with your own hands. If this story resonated with you, please hit that LIKE button and mention Winds of Thought in the comments so we know you're with us. Subscribe for more stories of resilience. Real family builds you up. They don't just show up for the harvest. I stopped begging for a ride and built my own road.